I'm going to show you how I made this into this organization piece for my craft room. I'm Alex Vanover, and welcome back to my channel, DIY Alex.
For the very first time, welcome to my garage. And today we are going to do a little bit less of a craft and a little bit more of a DIY. I bought this toy holder off of Facebook Marketplace for $20, and I'm in the process of redoing it, DIYing it to make it useful for my craft room. And I want to take you guys through the whole process of what I'm doing, and maybe you'll get some craft room inspiration or some ideas for your craft room too. If you're enjoying this video and you like crafts and DIYs, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so that you can follow along on my journey of all the crazy things that I craft and DIY. And if you wouldn't mind if you give this video a big thumbs up and share it, I'd really appreciate it. All right, let's get started.
So this video is obviously really sped up because I didn't want you guys to have to watch me painstakingly do everything. So the first thing that I did was prepare my paint. And the paint that I used is just some light gray interior paint that I had left over from painting one of our bedrooms. So I didn't buy any paint for this, but you could also use chalk paint or pretty much anything you have laying around. I'm not sure about acrylic paint or if that would work. So then I used this amazing paint stirrer that my husband came up with. That is a drill with a coat hanger inserted inside of it because he's super creative and he wanted a shout out for that. So Drew, there's your shout out. Your paint stirrer was awesome. And that was mostly because we didn't have any paint stir sticks in the house at the time, but that's okay, just details. So I started out with pretty much a bunch of paint and ended up using all of it in the end. And then I used two different size paint brushes, but I did use a little bit larger paint brushes that I bought at Lowe's. So I started out by wiping the toy holder down with a wet paper towel. I bought this off Facebook Marketplace, like I said, so this was in somebody else's house, and I just wanted to get the dust and the dirt off of it before I started painting. But I did not pre-sand this toy holder, which saved me a ton of time. So then I began painting on this right-hand panel, and it took a little bit longer than expected. I would say to paint this thing completely, it probably took me about an hour and a half, and that's just because the shape of the dowel rods is really weird. So I'll show you how I did that when I get there. There wasn't a ton of technique to the way that I chose to paint, but basically I painted the outside of the panel and then I worked on the handle a little bit. Then I kind of painted the inside of the panel, lifted up the bottom to make sure I got paint all the way down to the edge. Then I used a smaller brush to go back in and take care of any streaks. Then when I got to the inside of the panel, I started by painting around the dowel rods, because I just thought that would make things easier if I did that first. It's a little bit complicated to paint around the dowel rods, but once I got in a groove, it wasn't too bad. And then I started painting in the center. The handle tended to grab some of the extra drips and things like that, so I did go over the handle several times to make sure there wasn't any excess paint left in the handle. Then after that was done, I decided to start with the inside panel of the other side. So I began with the same technique of painting around the dowel rods, and then I painted the inside center. Then after I cleaned things up, I started on the outside panel. So I'd already done the border before I showed you this shot, and then I'm going to do the same thing where I cover the middle, I make sure I get around the bottom. Then you'll see me kind of dab my brush into the holes where the screws are, just so that the black screws don't show as starkly against the light gray painted wood. And then we moved to the hardest part, which was the dowel rods. I started from the back of the toy holder, getting the back of the dowel rods the best that I could. I started with the dowel rods closest to me and moved forward toward the front when I really should have done the opposite, which I learned when I get to the other side. That way you're not dipping your arm through painted dowel rods and getting paint all over the place. Ask me how I know that. This part took a while, and though it all ended up being worth it, my back really hurt by the time this was all over. Then I moved to the front of the dowel rods, and you see I got a little smarter, and I started with the dowel rods farthest from me, and then I got to the ones closest so that I wasn't sticking my hand through wet paint. I was able to cover the front of the dowel rods because the back of them was already painted. And then I got to the dowel rods on the very top, which I left completely blank until I could get to them. And keep in mind, this video is sped up like 7 times fast, so this did take me quite a while, but I sped it up because I didn't want you guys to have to sit through the entire process forever. Then I did a final inspection, kind of went back over the handles again, and the painting was done. So then I chose to use these baskets from Walmart. They are found in the pantry organization section, and they are awesome. The reason that I chose them is because they're easy and cheap, and they have this little divot that you can see in the bottom corner opposite of my hand. And that little divot is what allows these baskets to sit on the dowel rods and not fall through the cracks. So make sure that before you choose a basket, if you don't use the same ones that I did, that you check and make sure that they have this divot. I ended up using 3 of the small ones, which were $2.47 a piece. And then I ended up using 9 of the medium ones that you see there, which were $2.97 a piece. I tried the large baskets in the organizer, and they just didn't fit. Maybe they'll fit in yours if you have a different one. So then once the paint was dry, of course, I brought the toy holder up to my craft room. And then it was time to add the baskets. These worked out perfectly. Make sure that if you are doing a different basket than what I did, that you buy a few to try first and make sure that they're going to fit and work, because it definitely was a narrow fit, but they fit perfectly. And I will link these baskets in the description below if you want to use the same ones that I did. So you can see a little bit of paint or a little bit of wood through that first coat of paint, but I decided not to do a second coat because this is just for me and just for fun. If you are selling this or giving it to a customer, you may want to consider a second coat of paint and or sealing the paint. I did not, because I don't think it's going to get very roughly handled, but that may be something to consider for you. Here's me organizing all of the baskets. I kind of sorted them by blanks and what kind of vinyl they require. So towards the bottom, it's products that require HTV to personalize, and toward the top are the adhesive vinyl blanks that I've accumulated over the years. I was super impressed with how much this toy holder was actually able to hold. I was able to eliminate several other containers in my craft room because these just have so much storage. Those medium baskets are really huge and they hold a lot. So I was really, really pleased with the results, and I was fairly pleased with the aesthetic. It's not the cutest thing I've ever seen, but it's definitely functional, and it definitely looks nothing like a kid's toy organizer, which is what I was going for. I have a total of about $55 in this DIY. Toy holder costs about $20 on, and then I had about $35 or $40 in the baskets. So between like $55 and $60 for this DIY, which I would consider very reasonable, because if I was buying a whole new piece of furniture, I don't think I'd be able to buy it for that. So I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. And don't forget that you could totally do some chalk paint on the sides, or some extra colors, or some vinyl to really decorate and customize this. I wanted to keep my craft room look simple and clean, but that is definitely something to keep in mind if you want to make things a little more fun. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this DIY as a little bit of a break from our traditional Cricut craft. Here's the final look at the toy holder. We were able to make so much progress with a little bit of paint and a few new baskets.